Welcome to Cruise News, your daily update on everything happening at sea. Visit cruisenews.io to see today's stories and sign up for email alerts.
If you look closely at today's maritime landscape, you're really watching an industry in this constant state of, well, structural realignment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Today, we are examining the operational life cycle of cruise strategies. We're looking at how an active ship adapts its onboard programming for a major global event, then how a brand new vessel engineers its way around some very strict environmental regulations.
Right.
And finally, what happens when an older ship, ages out of a primary market and becomes the foundational infrastructure somewhere else.
With a fascinating look at how mobile these assets truly are. We are starting with that first phase, adapting an active ship to capture current market demand. Aroya Cruises is making a highly specific adjustment to the onboard programming for its 3,400 guest ship, which is simply named Aroya.
Right, exactly.
During its 2026 Eastern Mediterranean season, the ship is going to broadcast live 2026 FIFA World Cup matches across its public venues and even directly into guest cabins.
Yeah, and the logistics of this are, well, they're more complex than just flipping on a television. You're looking at a direct intersection of a global sporting event and maritime itinerary planning.
Oh, for sure.
The 2026 World Cup tournament runs from June 11 to July 19, and it is being hosted across Mexico, Canada, and the United States. And that exact operational window overlaps perfectly with Aroya's 7-night summer cruises based out of Istanbul.
Right, and those sailings are routed through Turkey, Egypt, and Greece. We are talking about specific port calls at Bodrum, Kais, Alexandria, Mykonos, Rhodes, and Piraeus. So immediately a geographical hurdle presents itself here.
Yeah, the time zones.
Exactly. If you are a passenger trying to follow the tournament, the time zone difference is severe. Evening matches in North America equate to late night or even early morning broadcasts in the Eastern Mediterranean.
Exactly. Aroya is taking a North American event and attempting to, seamlessly integrate it into a European and Middle Eastern operational schedule.
Yeah.
So to manage this, the line is heavily utilizing its dedicated infrastructure. Matches are confirmed to be shown in major public venues like the Legends Lounge, the Beats Lounge, and Dala.
Plus the in-stateroom televisions, right?
Right, exactly. And they're even building out physical fan zones on board and weaving tournament-themed activities directly into the scheduled children's programming.
But I have to push back slightly on the practicality of this. Yeah. How does a ship handle a massive influx of passengers into its lounges at, 3 or 4 in the morning while still maintaining normal port operations a few hours later?
It's tough.
I mean, if you are docked in Alexandria, you have passengers heading out early for full-day excursions.
Yeah, that is the core operational challenge. Aroya has to adapt its venue staffing and food service to accommodate irregular viewing hours without compromising the daytime experience in heavy-hitting ports like Piraeus. It requires a temporary 24-hour operational model for the duration of the tournament, balancing the late-night sports fans with the early morning sightseers.
It is a massive undertaking, which really tells you how important this specific deployment is to the cruise line. Let's look at the broader business context here. Yeah. Aroya is currently the only vessel operated by Cruise Saudi, and this deployment marks its second consecutive summer operating entirely outside the Red Sea. To even get to Istanbul for early June, the ship had to execute an 8-night repositioning voyage from Jeddah, navigating up through Sharm el-Sheikh, Port Sogna, and Port Suez.
Making a full transit of the Suez Canal.
Right, a full transit and then hitting Antalya and Bodrum before arriving at Galata Port.
Operating a single-ship brand is basically an exercise in risk management. Cruise Saudi has positioned their only asset in Istanbul for a 15-cruise run through September 12. And you might wonder why a brand named Cruise Saudi leaves its home region for the entire summer. Well, it comes down market capture. They're tapping directly into a surging domestic market in Turkey.
The numbers coming out of Galata Port certainly back up that strategy. The terminal is projecting that 35,000 Turkish citizens will board cruise ships in Istanbul this year alone.
Wow.
Which is a staggering 70% increase from 2025. And on top of that, the port has seen a 50% rise in the number of cruise lines utilizing the city as a home port over the past 3 years.
Yeah, Erdem Tabas, who sits on the Galata Port Istanbul Board of Directors, actually noted that Aroya's return for a second summer highlights Istanbul's strategic position and its, quote, increasing attractiveness in cruise tourism.
Right. But looking at those operational logistics, I want to ask you, How exactly does that 70% increase in domestic Turkish boarding figures correlate with Aroya's strategic decision to base its sole ship outside the Red Sea for a second summer?
Well, by anchoring their sole ship in a highly trafficked Mediterranean hub, Cruise Saudi establishes brand visibility and operational viability. They are capturing that 70% domestic Turkish growth to secure their revenue base before retreating back to their core regional operations in the winter.
And that retreat happens in mid-September.
Yes.
They run an 8-night repositioning cruise back to Jeddah, calling in Turkey and Egypt.
Yeah.
And then once back in Saudi Arabia, the ship transitions to its winter regional sailings.
Hitting Aqaba, Sharm el-Sheikh, Yanbu, and their private island destination, Jabal al-Sabaya.
Right. So Aroya shows us how an active ship adapts its programming and geography to fit the current market. Let's shift to the next phase of the life cycle, building entirely new tonnage to shape future operations.
Yes, we have a major delivery to discuss here. On June 12th, the Italian shipbuilding firm Fincantieri officially handed over the Mein Schiff Flow to TUI Cruises at its Monfalcone shipyard. This vessel actually completes the initial 2-ship order for the new Intuition class, joining its sister ship, the Mein Schiff Relax.
Right, and just to give you a sense of scale, this is TUI Cruises' 9th vessel. It registers at approximately 160,000 gross tons and has a passenger capacity of 3,984.
It's massive.
Yeah. And the delivery ceremony itself brought together senior leadership from both organizations. We saw TUI Cruises CEO Y. Breckemeyer.
Alongside Fincantieri's top executives, so Chairman Biagio Mezzada, CEO and Managing Director Pierroberto Folgero, Merchant Ships Division General Manager Luigi Matarazzo, and the Monfalcone Shipyard Director Cristiano Bizzarra.
Right, plus local authorities like Gorizia Prefect Esther Fadulo and Monfalcone Mayor Luca Fasson.
Right. And Fincantieri's CEO, Pierroberto Folgero, spoke at the handover. He noted that the delivery marks a new milestone in their collaboration with TUI Cruises and reaffirms the strategic role of the Monfalcone shipyard.
Yeah, and it is worth noting that TUI Cruises' leadership let the vessel speak for itself. They opted not to release a separate statement in the official delivery announcement.
Exactly. And Folgero's mention of the Monfalcone shipyard's strategic role is really grounded in sheer output. Fincantieri reports that more than 45 cruise ships have been constructed at this specific facility.
Wow.
Yeah, it is an industrial powerhouse employing an estimated 6,500 people daily.
And this partnership is definitely locked in for the long term. A contract signed in September 2025 secures 2 additional Intuition-class vessels for TUI, and those are slated for delivery in 2031 and 2032.
Right. Now, the defining characteristic of this new Intuition class is its environmental systems. As you know, the industry is facing incredibly strict emission regulations, particularly in European waters.
Right.
So the Mein Schiff Flow utilizes a dual-fuel design. Right now, it operates on either liquefied natural gas LNG or standard marine gas oil. But structurally, it is already prepared to utilize lower-emission alternative fuels like bio-LNG and e-LNG. It's essentially future-proofing the engine room for when those supply chains become commercially viable at scale.
Let's unpack the mechanics of that emissions package, because this is where the engineering gets genuinely fascinating. The ship is equipped with Euro 6 standard catalytic converters, which drastically cut nitrogen oxide emissions. But the standout feature is the steam turbine system designed to recover residual heat.
Yeah, think of it like regenerative braking in a hybrid car, but for thermal energy.
Right.
When the ship's diesel generators are running, they produce a massive amount of exhaust heat. Instead of just venting that heat out of the funnel, this steam turbine system captures it.
And converts that waste heat back into usable electrical power, right, to support the ship's hotel, load the lights, the air conditioning, the kitchens.
Exactly. They are also attacking waste management directly on board. The ship features an advanced waste treatment system that uses heat processing to convert organic waste straight into recyclable material, which reduces what needs to be offloaded at port.
And speaking of ports, the Mein Schiff Flow is fitted with an electrical shore power connection. Fincantieri states these combined systems allow for near-zero emission operations while docked at ports with the right infrastructure.
And that shore power capability is a critical metric. Industry data indicates that time spent at berth accounts for roughly 40% of a cruise vessel's total operational time.
That's huge.
Right. If you can plug into the local electrical grid for 40% of your life cycle and turn off the onboard engines, the reduction in localized port pollution is immense.
Definitely. And following the handover, TUI mapped out a very precise phased entry into service. They started with a quick 3-night preview at a Trieste on June 14th. Then came the official christening voyage on June 18th. An 8-night run from Trieste to Palma de Mallorca, hitting Koper and Palermo along the way.
Right, and the christening ceremony took place on June 20 in Trieste. What stands out here is how TUI handled the ship's sponsors. Instead of selecting a single celebrity godmother, they opened it up to a public process.
I love that.
Yeah, from a pool of 900 applicants and 15,000 fan votes, they selected 3 passenger godmothers: Julia, Annabelle, and Corinne.
It is a smart way to generate passenger loyalty right out of the gate. Looking at the summer deployment, Palma serves as the operational base. The ship is running Mediterranean round trips to Civitavecchia, which serves the Rome Market Marseille, and then alternating between Ajaccio and La Spezia. Come mid-September, it shifts to an 11-night Iberian Peninsula route, touching Barcelona, Cartagena, Malaga, Cadiz, Tangier, and Lisbon. And that ultimately positions the ship in Hamburg for Northern Europe itineraries.
And that transition to Hamburg brings us to a really significant operational pivot. TUI Cruises had originally planned for the Mein Schiff Flow to spend the winter in the Arabian Gulf. However, due to ongoing geopolitical situations in that region, they have completely scrapped that plan. The ship will now operate its winter itineraries strictly from German home ports.
Which, from a retail distribution perspective, altering a ship's deployment from a warm-weather destination to a cold-weather German home port during the dead of winter, that requires a massive shift in consumer marketing.
Absolutely.
If you are a travel advisor who had clients booked on those sunny Gulf sailings, you are now managing cancellations, issuing refunds, and trying to rebook those passengers onto an entirely different product.
Exactly. To mitigate that friction, TUI Cruises is offering travel agents an additional 2% commission on FIT bookings.
Those are free independent traveler bookings, right?
Right, FIT bookings made by July 31. They have also extended the early booking window to that same date.
So looking at that shift, how do you detail the way that 2% commission incentive functions as a direct mechanism to support sales agents dealing with geopolitical itinerary displacement?
Well, it is essentially hazard pay for the distribution network. The 2% commission compensates agents for the extra labor of processing mass itinerary changes. But more importantly, it acts as a direct financial lever to push newly scheduled German home port inventory.
Because it's a harder sell.
Exactly. Selling a Northern Europe cruise in the winter takes considerably more effort than selling a traditional sun destination. By imposing a July 31 deadline on that extra commission, TUI is creating a strict sense of urgency to secure a baseload of passengers and stabilize the revised season.
That perfectly illustrates how external geopolitical factors force immediate structural changes, even for a brand new vessel. Now, let's transition to the final phase of the fleet life cycle. An older vessel completing its final European deployments before exiting the fleet for an emerging market. We're tracking the Norwegian Sun, which has officially arrived in Northern Europe.
Yes, for its summer 2026 deployment, marking the beginning of its final chapters with Norwegian Cruise Line.
Right. The Norwegian Sun is an older, smaller class of ship by today's standards. It comes in at 78,309 gross tons, with a maximum capacity of 1,936 guests and a crew of 906. And to get to its new summer home, the ship just completed a massive 22-night repositioning voyage, arriving at the port of Southampton in early June.
And the routing for that repositioning really highlights the extreme logistical planning required to move maritime assets between global theaters. The ship actually originated in Asia, departed from Cape Town, South Africa, and essentially hugged the entire western coast of Africa.
Right. It is a staggering itinerary. They sailed from Cape Town to Walvis Bay in Namibia, up to Luanda in Angola, across to Takoradi in Ghana, and Abidjan in Ivory Coast, then up to Dakar in Senegal. From there, they pushed through the Canary Islands and the Iberian coast, so Las Palmas de Gran Canaria, Santa Cruz de Tenerife, Funchal, and Vigo, before finally arriving in the UK.
That marathon voyage positioned the ship to move to its seasonal home port in Copenhagen. Through mid-October, the Norwegian Sun is executing a heavy Scandinavian and Baltic deployment, running 7 to 10-night cruises between Copenhagen and Helsinki.
And those feature calls in Oslo, Norway, Tallinn, Estonia, Riga, Latvia, Kiel, Germany, Klaipėda, Lithuania, and Gdynia, Poland.
Exactly.
Once that Northern Europe season wraps up in mid-October, the domino effect of repositioning just continues. The ship will make a transatlantic crossing to New York City at the end of the season, followed by a repositioning to Port Miami.
Yep.
By early November, it transitions into an 11 and 12-night Caribbean program, which includes partial Panama Canal transits and calls in Central America.
But all of this routing is ultimately a countdown. Norwegian Cruise Line has confirmed the vessel's planned exit from their fleet. The Norwegian Sun will complete one final summer season in Europe in 2027.
Okay.
And then in September 2027, the ship will be transferred to India-based Cordelia Cruises under a charter agreement that was first announced back in 2025.
Wow. And once it transfers, it will be renamed the Cordelia Sun, right? Operating itineraries around India and Southeast Asia.
That's right.
To understand the context of this transfer, you really have to look at the current scale of the receiving brand. Right now, Cordelia Cruises operates exactly one ship, the Cordelia Empress.
Right. However, they are preparing for a massive influx of hardware. Before the Norwegian Sun arrives in 2027, Cordelia is actually scheduled to receive the Norwegian Sky later in 2026.
So we have the Norwegian Sun and the Norwegian Sky moving over. Can you structurally compare the passenger capacities of these transferring ships to illustrate the exact scale of Cordelia Cruises' fleet expansion in the Indian and Southeast Asian markets?
Yeah, it is not an incremental change. It is an exponential leap in operational capacity.
Right.
The Norwegian Sun holds up to 1,936 guests, and the Norwegian Sky brings a very similar footprint. By injecting two mature, nearly 2,000 passenger vessels into their portfolio, Cordelia fundamentally alters its regional market share.
Because they're going from one ship to three ships.
Exactly. This multi-ship framework allows them to simultaneously serve their domestic Indian coastal routes while aggressively expanding into broader Southeast Asian itineraries.
It is the economies of scale in action. Historically, the Indian and Southeast Asian cruise markets have been underserved by dedicated, locally based tonnage. They often relied on seasonal visits from Western brands. By absorbing the Norwegian Sky and the Norwegian Sun, Cordelia acquires the necessary volume to establish a dominant year-round presence.
Which brings us back to the overarching pattern we established at the beginning. You have Aroya Cruises utilizing customized World Cup programming to support a strategic, domestic-heavy deployment in Istanbul.
Yeah.
You have TUI Cruises leveraging the advanced dual fuel and heat recovery capabilities of the Mein Schiff Flow to optimize port operations, while simultaneously using commission levers to manage a geopolitical winter pivot.
And finally, you have the route data for Norwegian Cruise Line extracting the last European and Caribbean yields from the Norwegian Sun before transferring it to Cordelia Cruises, instantly facilitating a major fleet expansion in the Indian market.
Right. The geography of the cruise industry is never static. A ship reaching the sunset of its service in a mature market simply becomes the foundational mobile real estate for an emerging market.
Thanks for listening to Cruise News. Visit cruisenews.io to catch up on the latest updates and sign up for free email alerts.